So yeah, we've got 4 speakers with us today. I've got Jen Malzer, who works at the City of Calgary. Jen's a graduate from the University of Manitoba, currently working in our Livable Streets division. She's pioneering ways to involve more voices in our transportation planning through her work with leaders, health professionals, and developers. She is a member of IT and currently serving as the Canadian District Director and co-chair of the Women in ITE subcommittee. She's also involved in the international board for the Complete Streets Council. We also have Harold Horsfall with us. He's also from the City of Calgary. Harold is our Indigenous relations strategist and works involving facilitating Indigenous engagement on behalf of community planning. And sorry, the slide shows on automatic there. Creating customized training for city business units. He has a vast history with the land, the people that we have here, and prior to working with the Indigenous Relations Office, he was an active duty firefighter for the city. We have Jillian Jack from Tetra Tech, and she's down in Georgia right now, a beautiful sunny day down there. She has a BSc in Environmental Engineering from the University of Florida and an MSc in Environmental Engineering from Johns Hopkins. She serves as Tetra Tech's Diversity Inclusion Council and coordinator of Tetra Tech's Black Employee Resource Group. She's committed to continuing to promote Tetra Tech's dedication to inclusion, equity, and diversity in all aspects of the company's best practices. And lastly, we have Mia Talavera from Stantec. She concentrates on driving positive corporate culture, including the design and delivery of our global Stantec diversity inclusion plan, as well as Stantec's employment equity compliance in Canada. She provides technical leadership to the business in identifying and promoting businesses, directions, and initiatives related to inclusion, diversity, and equity. And Mia is commissioned as an active council member of the Stantec Global Inclusion and Diversity Council and chair of the Stantec Persons of Color Committee. So welcome our 4 presenters today, panel members. We're going to do a presentation from each of the 4 folks, and then there'll be an opportunity for question and answer from the membership. There is in the top right-hand corner of your screen, there's a little symbol that looks like a triangle and a square and a circle. If you click on that, it'll take you to a Q&A box, and you can drop your question and answers into there, and we'll answer those after they've done their presentation. So our first up is Jen Malzer.
Great, thanks Anne, and to Southern Alberta for hosting this panel. It's really exciting. So yeah, again, so I just have a few slides to give a snapshot of the perspective that I've gained over the last, I guess, 15 years being in transportation. It's still growing. I still don't know a lot of things about a lot of perspectives, but I've had the pleasure over the last few years to co-chair with another woman named Maggie McNamara, the Women of ITE subcommittee. And it's been a really great opportunity to explore gender in transportation, gender in the communities that we serve, and then also partner around ITE so that we have a diversity and inclusion committee. And so we've been working together on workshops that we can host together. And I think what's most important to us is just to say that, you know, most of us are transportation professionals on this call. It's a little bit outside of our wheelhouse, but at the same time, I think we all came into transportation to serve a public, to serve users. And so I like to think about gender and diversity and inclusion is really just getting to know our customers, getting to know the diverse needs, and sort of getting outside of ourselves and our own perspectives. So you can visit our websites. We've got a lot of topics over the last couple of years that we've been able to explore. So if you're interested in something around, you know, something personal, like what are some tips for me as an early or medium or mid career or sort of late career professional, you can go and find out some information there. Or about how do I make my workplace better? I think there's a lot of resources that you can find. So next slide, please. So a little bit closer to Calgary, I've been working at reimagining our traffic calming policy and creating a neighborhood streets policy. And I had the opportunity to, the city just approved, well, not just, maybe a year ago, gender and inclusion policy. And so there was sort of a pilot process before we developed and approved the policy called this GBA plus pilot. So there were 8 projects that got to go through this with some specialists to help support us as we tried to embed gender-based analysis. But actually GBA plus goes one step further and sort of starts to explore intersectionality. And if that's a new word for you, I encourage you to look into it. To me, it really hurt my head for my brain for first little bit. But again, it's taking that step to really go outside of your own experience to say, okay, well, I know my experience as a woman. What if I were a woman of color? How would my life be, just that much more complicated? What if I weren't married and I still had my son? Again, my life would be that much more complicated. So what are all the lenses that make my experience real as an individual? And so I just share these 5 questions because I found them sort of at the heart of it is really asking ourselves these questions. So even though it sounds complicated and intimidating, and it is, it's really just thinking about, what assumptions am I making? Who could be left behind if I don't do my work well? How am I communicating, and who did I talk with? What kind of data did I use? And really thinking about equality of outcomes. When we talk about a mobility, we all have different needs, but what are the outcomes? So the outcomes should be, getting to school, getting to work. What are those outcomes, not the travel mode itself? And then how am I evaluating, did I accomplish what I hoped for my community? Next slide, please. So I love this example. In transportation, we are evolving all the time. So Calgary Transit, this is one of the really oldest C-train cars, and out of thoughtfulness to our wheelchair customers, we started bending the bar, this door bar, to give more space, to make it more easier for wheelchairs to pass through. But what happened was that our visually impaired customers, then they would detect the bar at the base and then end up walking in and hitting their head on the bar because we just weren't at the time in touch with sort of the breadth of all of our customers. And I think that's what this journey is about, is talking with one customer and finding out their needs, and then also seeing that and accepting that a lot of our individual goals may compete against others, and that's okay. It's this constant getting to know the customers and then trying to weave towards a solution that works for everyone. Next slide, please. So I just share, and one of the other big messages that we talk about is just to own your own bias. We are biased. It's not a bad thing, and to think of it maybe as your blind spot. So this is my bias. I'm a white woman. I have a white son, and that's my story, and that's my experience. I have a little bit maybe of understanding of through my dad's story of what it is like to grow up really poor. I've lived without a car. I have some of those experiences, but I don't have a lot of experiences, and so it's finding opportunities to learn from others who have had those experiences, and being respectful in terms of learning those. I also love to share this slide because he's not using the infrastructure the way it's meant to be, and how true is that for so many of our customers? It's not fun to walk on the sidewalk, and so how are we designing cities that are fun and can be used in the way that our customers want to? And so, I guess in this case, he is using our infrastructure in the way he wants to. And I think designing for kids and designing for this broader audience is what's going to make us a competitive city. So as funding becomes more and more difficult to get in Calgary, positioning it, the projects, the work we do in terms of this is a city that people want to move to because this is where kids can be kids, I think is just another reason to think about diversity and inclusion. And my last slide, is also just to really listen to the public, that we don't have to have a solution. So a few years ago, we launched a program, a micro grant program called Activate YYC, where we knew it would be hard for the city to say yes to a lot of resident ideas, but we went down the path anyway. This is one of the ideas in Renfrew, was to host Edmonton Trail Day. And so at first we said yes, we said no, because as we anticipated we would. It's hard for transportation engineers sometimes to try something new, but we followed the community's lead. They programmed it according to their character, according to their businesses. It was a really great experience. And I think as a city and as transportation professionals, not only did we support those local goals, we built our own toolkit so that when COVID came around, we were a lot better positioned to have lane conversions, to give more space back to communities. So I think diversity and inclusion doesn't have to be that hard. You have to be a little bit vulnerable and maybe follow the lead of communities, and in the end, we'll be better professionals. So anyway, that's my 5 slides, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from my other co-panelists.
Hello, everyone. How are you? My name is Harold Horsfall. I'm going to go here, I guess. Start with the approaches that we've been doing, and it's an approach that I've been working with the Indigenous Relations Office. So my name is Harold Horsfall, and I'm a issue strategist with the City of Calgary's Indigenous Relations Office. I'm a born and raised Calgarian. My mom is Treaty 4, so just outside of 9. An issue strategist now since 2018 with the city. The thing is that in terms of Indigenous relations, like how generally you have to get to know you, in terms of being the business, Indigenous relations is brand new capacity to the city of Calgary. There's been a lot of Indigenous relations type of activities that have gone on, the Society for Aboriginal Youth, and they were born. It's a very good organization. It was now in grassroots. It's for Indigenous youth, and they do a lot of cool things with technology. One thing is that they did a virtual residential school. So what I've been doing is I've been creating customized training. So earlier, one of the projects that came across the IRO's desk is doing Indigenous awareness training for the whole corporation. So there'll be, well, in between 12 and 16,000 people. And we wanted to be able to roll out to everyone, and then to have, you know, for people that would have to have more hands-on approach to Indigenous relations, of course, they would get more content material. But then the problem with like rolling out something massive and online like that is that our HR department said that the retention rate is usually less than 50%. And I was just like, wow. And we're starting to look at something that would be in the hundreds of thousands. And then that's kind of really poor turnover. So instead, I decided, like acknowledgements, how many people in here are comfortable with giving a land acknowledgement? If I asked you right now to give the Treaty 7 land acknowledgement, who would be able to do it? Maybe I could have like a show of hands. And this is really important stuff, because this is, as Jen was saying, you have to get to know your customer. You got to get to know the culture. Jack can do a land acknowledgement. Jack, would you like to? Can I ask you to give us a land acknowledgement?
Yeah, I guess we're gathered here today on Treaty 7 territory, home of the Tsuut'ina Nation, Stoney Nakoda Nation, Métis Region number 3.
Thank you. And the Siksika CITE, so Siksika, Gaina, Pikani. And then there's also the Mskapi Pikani, which means Southern Pagan. And they got caught on the other side of the border, so down in the States. So those are the nations of Treaty 7. But what is a land acknowledgement? And that was the thing, is when we started diving down into training on what it is, most people thought it was just something to recognize that Indigenous people were here first. If you put it as straightforward and as blunt as possible. But that's not what a land acknowledgement does in the Indigenous point of view. So when you're looking at the land, and that's why I put the picture there, like, it's beautiful. And then you start reflecting, and without this land, without a pristine environment, and of course this is the river valley, the Bow River Valley, without that water, none of us are going to survive for very long. So it's about putting you in your place and being thankful for all of those things that you have that will sustain your life, and trying to implement like a real long-term view to approaching things. So if you think of like corporate, I'm just going to be a little flippant here. If you think of like corporate Canada, what's the average outlook of the next company? Well, if you look at the things that are important, quarterly reports are really important. So then does that mean your average outlook is only 3 months? So just kind of thinking in those terms, and that's more what a land acknowledgement does. The other point was, and that Jack did that that was a really good land acknowledgement. Thank you, Jack. Thank you for stepping forward. And the thing is to build your comfort. My goal was to build the comfort level of those employees who wanted to give land acknowledgements. And this was the key thing. They came to me and they asked for land acknowledgement training because they didn't want to read it from a script. And they're not meant to be read from the script. They're meant to be from the heart. So we can go to the next slide there. I think it's Anne. And let's go to the next one. Okay, so here's a video, and I'll just mute my mic. And the real important thing that I would like people to listen to is that at all of these points, not is it always about someone saying that we're here first. It's describing history, relationship, and etc. All of these things, which is in the Indigenous view, is much more holistic. And so I think that's a challenge that most of the Western non-Indigenous city staff that I've come across is just starting to understand where the Indigenous perspective actually comes from, and that usually it does not conform to what your ideas are. And that's why you actually should have to, that's the part for the training. For example, the team lead who I worked with, she actually, it was Alice Kakwitz here, who's on the screen, that was the elder that we worked with, and the three of us co-created the land acknowledgement training. And let's play the video, and I'll come back and talk a little more after.
What is land acknowledgement?
Those of us that are continuing our oral history are blessed. What we shared, that was told from way back.
We were part of the ecosystem. We were not masters of it.
You know, after we grow up from our biological mothers, the earth becomes our caregiver. Everything that we need is there.
We were raised to believe that everything has a spirit, and that everything around us is alive and has a purpose.
The spirit of the land and our spirit. You can't separate land and people.
In Treaty 7 territory, I'm accepted, I'm something, and I'm with my people.
We honor our ancestors by acknowledging Treaty 7 territory. We acknowledge the Treaty 7 nations, the Piikani First Nation, the Siksika First Nation, the Gala First Nation, the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, and the Tsuut'ina First Nation. We acknowledge the ancestral territory of the Siksika-Tsitapi, the Blackfoot Confederacy, and the home of Métis Region number 3.
There is actually something that's going on, and it's relevant culturally. And as you get to know Indigenous people, then you start to understand what this is actually saying. It's not saying that we own the land or we were here first and all of this other things, which, you know, are usually like, you know, they're just glimmers. Those like could be myths or stereotypes that are like glimmers or of a reflection of a lake, but they're not actually the lake itself. So with the land acknowledgement training, and in terms of diversity and inclusion, in my part, I understand diversity and inclusion. Diversity is quite easy in the workplace to increase. You just hire a whole bunch of different diverse people. The inclusion part is making sure that they can actually understand one another, because we have cultural differences in how we communicate. And even like if you take in my business writing class, they taught us to give negative feedback in the sandwich approach. So in the sandwich approach, so you had a positive message, a negative message, and then another positive message. And then you knew it was expected you could say that, because that's not going to hurt anyone's feelings. That's a very cultural trait, in case you didn't notice. And then, but then in the Western, of which there's the context in which I took the business writing course, if you're giving feedback and you give a negative comment than a positive comment, that means that you've actually screwed up much more than when you got the sandwich comment. So just little things like that. That's just one. Those are just two little things. And the whole point of this kind of training and the way it's customized is that I want the retention to stay high, and I want it to actually mean something, and for people to actually experience it, and to actually change, to actually create a paradigm shift. We can go to the next slide, please. And so these are the messages that I give, and especially bullet number 2, where we did, so firefighting, you have perishable skill sets. So if you're not practicing them all the time, then you can be in trouble. And of course, given the nature of, or the gravity of the weight of when you do have an incident where you do have to call the fire department, it's usually going to be pretty serious. So you need to have those skills ready to go. So we do a lot of drills, and just like in doing the drills and having your hands on, I find Indigenous culture is the same. It's a very hands-on culture, and you know, you're not going to get so much from reading about it as you would from actually learning from it and having the discussions with the people. So that's the environment that I create, and the whole goal is then I enable city staff to be able to be more informed when it comes to doing anything that's in terms of Indigenous relations, which, you know, I think it's a really good approach, and so far I've gotten really good feedback on all of my training. So yeah, I think that's all that I have. So let's go to I think that's the last slide. Let's go ahead and, yep, there it is. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to any questions or any discussion. Thank you.
Okay, I will get started. Hello, everybody. My name is Jillian Jack. I am a senior project manager with Tetra Tech, as mentioned in the Atlanta office. I also serve on Tetra Tech's D&I Council that was established in 2016, I believe. And I am the coordinator for the Black Employee Resource Group, name being Believe. Next slide. So a little about me. As I mentioned, I'm a senior project manager in the area of water and wastewater. I have about 18 years of experience in consulting, 6 years with Tetra Tech. Currently managing a construction of a 54 MGD membrane plant. And like I said, I've served in the D&I Council for about a year. I'm going into my second term. I say my passion for D&I is, the term that I like to use is permanently propping the door open behind me. Obviously, I'm a Black female in a male-dominated space, and I've been rather successful in my 18 years thus far. And as I've become a mother and moved into 10 years of this year of motherhood, I want the same for my children. I have 2 sons, 2 Black sons, and for all the other people that are coming behind me that might not necessarily feel represented in the engineering space. Next slide. So I was asked to just give a little bit of an overview of what does the Diversity and Inclusion Council do at Tetra Tech, and what is that policy like? So the company is committed to providing a working environment where all employees are valued for their contributions, and our global workforce reflects the diversity of our clients and the communities in which we work. It's really important for us as consultants to make sure that the staff that we have look like our clients. It's a relationship-based business. Obviously, we are not selling, nuts and bolts or products. We're selling people and knowledge and what we can do for our clients to help them solve their problems. And that is an easier task to do when you can kind of get to know your clients a little bit better. And that sometimes is easier when they have people that they feel connected with on many levels. Next slide. So at Tetra Tech, the Diversity and Inclusion Council monitors the overarching D&I that's happening on many of our operating units. The company itself has numerous units that work in many different spaces. I work in the infrastructure group. Obviously, we have other groups that do other things such as global development, just science, oil and gas, solid waste, and each of these units sort of work as individual companies in a way. So the way that the council is set up is that we each represent our division. I represent what was called the United States Infrastructure Division. We've been changed to the Resiliency Division, and I represent that division as a part of the overall council. There's 16 members that we each serve 2-year terms. At the end of our term, we can choose to either continue on or hand it over to somebody else. As I mentioned, I'm about a year and a half into mine. And the members represent the divisions of the company themselves. There are corporate representatives, including our COO, our legal counsel. Various aspects of the company are represented on the council. Next slide. So we have, as I mentioned, been in operation and doing D&I in the space for quite some time. But honestly, we really started to get our sea legs this year with the murder of George Floyd here in the US in May. As a result of that, we had honestly an emergency call. It was a late night call, maybe 7 p.m. Eastern time, my time, where we all came together and really asked ourselves whether or not we as a collective of the council are doing our best to serve the employees of Tetra Tech, in realizing that there are lots of employees that are clearly going through a lot, especially with the race relations that were happening at that time and have been happening in America for quite some time. And we really asked ourselves, what could we do to be better servants to the company as a whole and make sure that our employees felt supported and could come to work and know that it was a space that their thoughts and the way that they felt was valued, and that they had others that could support them. And at that time, we decided to establish the Employee Resource Group program, a voluntary program that is made up of professionals throughout the company, and allows people of common interest and shared experiences to come together and have support from each other. And it actually was a program that was in support of the D&I goals of the company itself. And it did that by providing a safe work environment, fostering a learning and development, and ensuring employment opportunities. Next slide. So right now we have 3 fully chartered ERGs, meaning that they are recognized by corporate as a global ERG for the entire world where we work, and 2 that are in development. Like I mentioned, I'm a co-coordinator for the Employee Resource Group for Black employees. We, through a survey, chose the title Believe, Black Employees Leading in Innovation, Enthusiasm, Vision, and Excellence. The Professional Women's Network has been an organic kind of grassroots organization with our group within the company for years, and they became fully chartered this year as well. We last month, I apologize, got the Latino and Hispanic ERG up and running. They have not chosen their name quite yet, but they are having a kickoff very soon. The LGBTQI+ ERG is currently in development, and we're also developing a Veterans ERG. So these are right now the 5 representative ERGs that we have, and we have a process for employees to be able to put forth other ERGs if they see the need for that. We've considered a BIPOC group as well, and it just really is sort of organic and starts with someone from the company saying that this is something they'd like to take on, and then finding others that would like to join with them. I'm not sure if this is my last one or if there's another one, so next slide. Okay, as far as the Believe group is concerned, like I mentioned, we did form the idea after the murder of George Floyd. We did have, it took us a little while to get the process together. In August, we did a town hall for all of the any interested Black employees that wanted to join, and we were very clear that we wanted to keep that specifically to Black employees, or those employees that self-designated as Black. And we had that, like I mentioned, in August. I think that was about 250 employees that joined. We kicked off with an inaugural meeting this past October. We are focusing right now in the stage of developing committees, focusing on mentoring, recruitment, and engagement. A roundtable discussion committee that's working on just having holistic conversations for the group over time and networking. And we officially will start with our full meetings in January of next year. I believe that's my last slide.
I'm just going to unmute myself. Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. So hello, everyone. Mia Talavera. I want to thank Josh Workman, who invited me to speak on behalf of Stantec, and I know he's on the call. My presentation is just a little bit more general, just to speak. I'll share with you a little bit of Stantec's journey in the I&D space. A little bit about me. I'm not an engineer. Shock. And I actually have a background in strategy, and I have been working as in a very small group, just the two of us in the company, that are responsible for Stantec's global diversity inclusion strategy. And I have been working on this portfolio since 2015, and it's been a long journey. And so anything that I want to leave with you, just a message for some of you who are thinking, this is a space that I want to get into. I want to bring this level of thought leadership back to my company. Be kind with yourself. It does take a long time to change culture, but I think that you have to start somewhere, and this is a year to start. And I want to share with you, a little bit about our journey and what we are doing now, 5 years down our strategic plan of strategy. And also, I'm based in Edmonton, so I am an Albertan. Thank you for having me today. And I'm just deeply passionate about driving strategies and business outcomes that can be leveraged by inclusion, diversity, and equity. So my next slide. So at Stantec, we like to say that we create opportunity by inviting, embracing, and celebrating differences. And as a global company, we operate in almost every continent in the world, and obviously have a large presence in Canada and North America. And we felt that very early on, as we were creating our strategic plan around diversity inclusion, that we really wanted to be reflective of the diverse communities that we are operating in and the communities that we are building in, as well as, understanding that for us to be a top tier design firm, we want to continue to grow and advance diverse talent that we had within the firm. And this also includes groups that are underrepresented. And to ensure that we have a welcoming, inclusive culture that is fostering diversity, but it also is providing equitable opportunities for those who are not always represented. We had key priorities that we wanted to establish to support this. And I'm kind of listing here on the slide, things that have been put in place for the last couple of years, but we want to continue to strengthen. And number one, that goes to, our original vision is that we wanted to diversify the firm. And so we want to continue to bridge gaps of underrepresentation. And, typically in STEM industry, and some of you can resonate with this, that, male dominated, sometimes white male, able-bodied, cisgender dominated, and there is not always other diverse faces and voices that are at the table. And so early on, Stantec understood that, again, where can we search to not only identify, who is diverse talent, but also ways that we can advance them and mentor them so that eventually that they will be given an equal opportunity to raise to higher levels of leadership. And, diversity can look like many things, not just gender, not just speaking to women, but it could be, our Indigenous peoples. It could be members of the BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous, persons of color. This can be your members from your LGBTQ plus community, as well as the disabilities community. And so there's many avenues. And, now, given the ubiquitous awareness around Black Lives Matter movement, and so Jillian has said that I think a lot of companies are also trying to redefine, yes, diversity is important, but having a diverse workforce doesn't necessarily mean that diversity is thriving. And I also heard that from Harold, that you want to ensure that, inclusion is being fostered. And a way to do that, really, I believe, is to be people-centric and people-focused, and an understanding that people come into the workplace that have unique life experiences, They bring to them not only their diverse background, but, thoughts, experiences, even, perspectives, and all of that needs to be celebrated and to take into account when you are thinking about, creating teams. So some of the priorities here listed is that, bridging gaps of underrepresentation. We have launched unconscious bias training, which is nothing new. Many other firms, a lot of the large tech companies have unconscious bias training, which really was step one in creating awareness of how do we give people the vocabulary to actually have some of these conversations that can be quite difficult around inclusion and diversity about, people having biases and privilege, and people who may not know that they are being discriminatory, or understanding that there may be microaggressions. And so really giving people the tools to have their own self-awareness and understand how they show up in a global workplace, but as well as to give language to call things out that we would say are not contributing to an inclusive and welcoming environment. We also have IND councils. We created the councils in 2015, and we have a global council structure. So almost our large operations, we have a council in Canada, in the US, New Zealand, Australia, Taiwan, Europe. We're creating one in Latin America for Chile and Argentina, just so that everyone is aligned to like our corporate structure about how we want to be an inclusive firm, but there's some room for local variation. And it's important, again, to give, unique platforms to other diverse groups. What is going to be seen as a priority in the United States may not be the priority in Dubai versus England versus Italy. And so we want to have council structures set up that they are continuing to act as advocacies and also create practices within their local operations. And that can be duplicated, in many different business units as well. We also have our ERGs, and in the next slide, I will talk a little bit about them and just share more about them. Thanks for advancing the slide. So our ERGs, and this is my personal opinion, have been such a game changer for Stantec, really truly living up to its values of being inclusive and equitable. ERGs, again, nothing new. ERGs have been around since the civil rights movement in the United States in the 60s, and they historically should be your employees that represent diverse groups that have been historically discriminated against in the workplace. Very early on, we identified that Stantec, in order to advance diversity and inclusion, we wanted there to be underrepresented voices that came to the table that could almost be like a bottom-up communication where, diverse employees who actually are experiencing sometimes not so great experiences, but sometimes good, would want to have their voice heard to say, this is what it's like to show up in the workplace as a woman of color. Or as someone who identifies with having a non-visible disability, and these are the things that I need from the organization for this to feel like it's a welcomed belonging place where I can really be myself. In order to do that, the ERGs were born, and so I created the ERG framework in 2015, and it has been 5 years in the making, and so we do have a little bit more established ERGs because of the history, and we are actually continuing to see more. But here I've listed kind of our 8 ERGs. We have Women at Stantec, which similarly you heard from Jillian, wanting to focus on women's empowerment, but also bringing men into the conversation. Our ERGs are open to anyone, and I think that's a really good differentiator that you should have if you're thinking about creating ERG network in your company, is that yes, ERGs should encapsulate the voices of underrepresented groups, but you really want to have others be part of the conversation. And so we have diverse groups kind of leading the conversations, but we have allies, and there's a level of active allyship that needs to be involved to change the culture. And Josh, who's on the call, I'm not sure if those of you know that Josh used to be a lead of a Pride at Stantec chair in Calgary. And as me, who identifies, as not a member of the LGBT community, I saw myself as an ally, and I wanted to be a part of the Pride at Stantec ERG and support Josh and their initiatives, but as an ally. And I think that's an important message that you can share with others, that you don't have to identify with that diverse community to support them and to be a part of the change that they're trying to advocate for. And then my last slide is just talking about, I wanted to kind of end the note that, we are continually driving progress and open to continuous improvement. And, we have made commitments in light of, the Black Lives Matter movement and the civil unrest, like, many other companies. And we want to continue to advance racial equity specifically. You heard in my bio that I am the chair of the Persons of Color Committee at Stantec. And this committee really has a mission that we want to increase representation of underrepresented BIPOC employees, which I also identify as, and really help increase, development and mentorship opportunities for racialized employees that have been, systemically discriminated against, that we see. And I would say that this work and a lot of, companies you'll see, are having statements talking about, the ways that they're advancing anti-racism and racial equity work. But this is a lot of work that is going to take time. We're not going to solve racism, I believe, in my lifetime, but, we need to be invested as an industry and as companies that we want to be unwaveringly committed to supporting racial equity efforts if we truly want to have, our top tier talent and really say that we are equitable. Say that there's a lot of personal interest in the company right now to think about, how can people be involved. And I think another message that I want to leave you with, if you're already thinking about, this is some of the work that you want to do, is that it's important that you have it be like a collective effort around racial equity. It's not up to racialized individuals to bear this burden to solve racism and discrimination in their workplace, yet they have probably held the shame of that for a very long time. And I think the work of reconciling the system and systemic injustice is that, again, it's a collective effort. And I'm so proud at Stantec that, we continue to want to reach out to communities, but also to support BIPOC community in ways that we can help them from an education standpoint. And here I've just kind of listed that, we continue to invest into STEM investments. And we just set up a Stantec Equity and Diversity sponsorship program that's really supposed to reward the academic achievements of BIPOC students and matching them with internships, across our North American operations so that they have an actual opportunity. Sometimes it's not enough just to, post and pray, which is, a term that I like to use, that, companies will post a job and just hope that someone of a diverse background will apply. You actually need to do outreach and go into the communities and reach out and build connections and share with them, these are the opportunities that we have, and we're going to carve out, ways that we can bring these opportunities directly to you. I mean, a lot of underrepresented groups, need that level of outreach. And we also partner with corporate partnerships really related to our industry. And so we are on the board of affiliates with NSBE, which is the National Society of Black Engineers. Last year, NOMA, we're a chair employer helping minority architects, and more recently have been a part of ASIS, which is the American Indian Science and Engineering Society, to support Indigenous students in STEM education as well. And I think those are all my slides, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks very much, everyone. I'm just going to go up to the questions here in the Q&A. So I have one from Tony Churchill. Any tips or hacks on how to promote diversity and highlight barriers that may not be obvious to all? Thanks in advance for taking the time to share with us. I don't know if any of the panelists wants to jump in. I won't pick on anyone in particular.
Sure, I'll jump in. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's just kind of, you don't know what you don't know. And just to be cognizant of that, nobody knows everything. So, and that's one thing I can know for certain. And then just to start talking to people, and don't just watch your assumptions and really actually try to learn. It's just that whole thing. Like if you go for tea, and I think it was Bruce Lee said it. If you come to see me for tea and you bring your own teacup, but it's full of tea, how am I going to share any of my tea with you? And it's just kind of in that kind of same thing. Just have an open mind, suspend your assumptions, but know what your end goal is, but be flexible. And this is the other part I wanted to talk about when Jen was speaking. A lot of part of my job is a lot similar to the way that she did Edmonton Trail, in that you just create the space and you let the people fill it. And in that sense, then I try to create space that for Indigenous people and to do a sort of a cultural translation. We're all speaking English, but the way that you speak English, the denotations, the connotations are different. And so then I try to bridge those in the sense that you try to build bridges. But talking to people, making space for them, and listening is probably the best hack. that would be my input. Panelists?
I would agree with that. I would say on top of that, and I don't know the person who asked the question, what level of leadership, but I think, all of us in some capacity are leaders. And I think it's your role as a leader to establish a sense of belonging. Belonging is such a key component to inclusion. And I think when people feel a genuine sense that they belong and that they are seen and that they matter and that their voices matter, you can build a rapport where people will be comfortable to come to you. And sometimes, I see this at Stantec where someone may be, very passionate about wanting to support a racialized employee and just kind of call them out and say, like, tell me your experience, what can I do? But, you have to build trust and again, create that sense of belonging for people to feel comfortable to come to you. So I would say, first try to build rapport and trust. And then I think you'll learn that way from really speaking to people's lived experiences.
Okay. Jillian or Jen, do you have anything to add? If not, I'll go down to the next one.
Sure.
No.
Oh, Jen, you go first.
Go ahead.
I would just add, I like to think about learning in two ways. So the first way is just learning the experiences, and then learning the behaviors. So when it comes to inclusion, I think is learning, what are the challenges that are out there. So number one might be just people, BIPOC or women, not having the opportunity to speak. So being aware of the pitfalls, and then learning the behaviors that you can do to correct the situation. So, it's a real delicate art, I think, to say, okay, I'd like to go back to Jillian's point and make sure that we've all heard it. So yeah, I like to think about that in the two perspectives.
Jillian, do you want to add? And I'll just make a note to the panelists. There's a couple other questions. If you want, we're kind of running out of time. Add your comments and responses in the chat or the Q&A, section as well. That would be great. Sorry to cut you off there, Jillian.
No, that's fine. No, I would agree. I mean, I think the biggest thing to me is to, especially, depending on the question, if it's an organizational approach, I think the biggest thing is to actually be open to hearing what your organization looks like and not tell people what your organization is. I mean, I think that's a big part of leading from the top is actually being willing to hear from people who are affected or working within that organization of what the organization truly is and how their experience is within it, and not tell them, well, that can't be right. That's not how we are. I think that's been a big part of being successful with really getting a D&I space going.
Thanks. I'll ask one last question, Jen, of you, and then I'll get the rest of you to answer the other ones there. It's Jen, can you tell us a little bit about how to get involved with the Women of ITE subcommittee?
Sure, yeah, I was just gonna write in the chat too, but I think a few different ways. We've been hosting workshops at our annual meetings. We write a blog, so if you have a topic that you think you could contribute, we'd love to have guest authors. And then sort of once a year, we're able to take on new volunteers onto the committee. And so in the next few weeks, we'll be publishing our action plan, so there may be some other place where you might like to get involved. But please just reach out and let me know what your interest is. We can always use good volunteers.
Excellent, thanks. I'll let the chat keep going kind of in the background. We have a couple last announcements that I'm going to flip to for presentation. I just wanted to thank all of our speakers. I learned a lot. I was writing down some notes there, and I think the one that resonates most with me is one that Jen had identified, which was own your own bias. And I really think that's a really interesting way to think of the positive part of the lens that you're looking through and how you approach life and work. So thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate that. Okay, I'll flip over to...
jump in there? One
What's
second.
that, sorry?
Could I just say one comment?
Sure.
Yeah, and it's to the question that's in the Q&A, and it's on resources available to develop land acknowledgement statement. It's tough. The challenge, like I said, with everything is that all these Indigenous relations offices across different municipalities across the country are all in the process of developing, and a lot of this stuff, nobody really knows how it's going to look. So it's very much in the pioneer phase. Yeah, that said, I'm technically not on city time, but on my own time, I do have a consulting company where I've created training programs like for the Young Pipeliners Association of Canada, and so if you know people that consultants that put this kind of stuff together, that's usually where you get those resources, and you kind of got to create them. So just throw that in there. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I'll switch it over to Zoran here. Load up the presentation again, Zoran.
Sure. Yeah, we just have next poster presentation and winner announcement. Lou, if you don't mind taking over, and then you can announce Mira giving us the election results.
Yeah, thank you, Zoran. So this year we had 4 poster entries. I'd like to thank all the companies that submitted their posters. Basically HDR Inc., Tetra Tech, Tool Design, and HBA Specto. We had over 75 viewers that voted, and the best 2020 project poster fan favorite was Ontario Line by HDR. Runner-up was the Lethbridge Waste and Recycling Facility paving by Tetra Tech. And I'd like to give an honorable mention. When we first originally thought about this poster competition, we were going to do a TikTok theme, basically, where you had 3 one-minute videos, and each video leading to the next. However, I think there were some issues with respect to interest and potentially the difficulties and challenges associated with that. We kind of put the videos as being optional. However, but let's give an honorable mention to HBA Specto for creating a video as part of their poster presentation. So honorable mention to them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lou. I think we have Mira next to give us the election results for the executives Southern Alberta ITE section.
Yeah, thanks, Zoran. So as you all know, we recently had our Southern Alberta IT executive election, and voting closed yesterday. There were 4 positions, or 4 positions were acclaimed, I should say, by individuals currently serving on the committee, and there was 1 vacant position this year for publicity coordinator. We had 2 applications for the open position, and thanks to both of them for running this year. There were close to 90 votes that were cast, and it was a really close race right up till the end. And you can see on the screen here, we're happy to announce Annie Wang as the new publicity coordinator. Congratulations, Annie, and welcome to the ITSA section executive. I also just wanted to say a quick thank you to Zoran as he steps down from his role as president. And I want to also thank all of the current executive committee for their continued commitment to IT in the Southern Alberta section. So congratulations, everyone. And I believe there will be a swearing in ceremony at the next ITE meeting in January. Thanks, Zoran.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us. We are about to wrap up maybe in 3 minutes, but just before that, if you can stay with us, there is a couple of holidays videos that our members submitted, and Maudrey's gonna probably, if you don't mind, Maudrey, just going through it and playing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anne is just going to click the link that's on the slide, and that should work, Zoran. Thank you, everyone, and special thanks for everyone who wear red. You are the ones who actually read the IT announcements.
Happy holidays, everyone. Like many of you, I am looking forward to the end of 2020. But in the midst of a global pandemic, our community of transportation professionals here in Canada remains strong. So to lift everyone's spirits as we head into the holiday season, the CITE executive would like to spread some festive cheer by way of some seasonally appropriate dad jokes. So here goes. What do you call an elf that can sing and dance? Over to you, Edward.
Thanks, Ryan. Why was Santa's little helper depressed? Because he had very low self-esteem.
That's very sad. All right, mine's a little bit more Canadian. What do you get when you cross a snowman with a vampire?
What, Jim?
Frostbite.
And because I like cars, my joke is, what kind of cars do Santa's elves drive? And that is Toyotas.
Okay, well, mine, I have one. What does a gingerbread man use to keep his bed warm?
What is it, Satan?
Cookie sheet.
All right, Bobby.
I got the last one here, guys. What kind of motorcycle? What kind of motorcycle does Santa like to ride? A Harley Davidson. Oh, very good. So on behalf of the CITE executive, I would like to wish you and your families a wonderful holiday season. And we look forward to being able to gather with everybody once again in 2021.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Happy holidays. Okay, girls.
Alfred here, wishing all my IT family and friends a very Merry Christmas and a happy, prosperous New Year.
May this Christmas end the present year on a cheerful note and make way for a fresh and bright new year. Here's wishing you a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year.
With a special situation this year, although we could not meet in person, it was great for Southern Alberta ITE to be still hosting many wonderful webinars throughout the year. I'd like to say thank you to all the volunteers and speakers. We are also wishing the entire Southern Alberta ITE community a healthy and joyful holiday season and throughout 2021.
Hello, Southern Alberta ITE members. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Hope you all stay safe over the holidays and spend time with immediate families. Thank you. Take care.
I think we lost the video on that one. I mean, audio on that one.